I'm a commentator at the SPY. I have lived here. I'm a real short-termer compared with our candidates. I've lived here for less than 10 years, about 7 years. But I really do love Easton, and it's given me a chance to get involved in so many different things. And I have to tell each of you, it's a pleasure to get the chance to have this conversation. I don't know of an election in which the three candidates have such an extraordinary record of involvement, engagement, and having lived here for decades, and all come so qualified and so involved already. So thank you for your service to the community, and thank you for stepping up to run for this important role. Each of them has done an extended interview with Dave at the SPY, and we said rather than have opening statements, we'd get right into our discussion, and at the end, I will invite them to say a few words and have a kind of a closing statement so that anything that's not covered, they get a chance to talk about. But I wanted to jump right into kind of a broad question, which has to do with this role of the mayor. And Bob, I want to start with you because you've been there, but I think we would all benefit from understanding how better understanding the role the mayor plays in guiding and directing some of the issues that come, before the council and before the city.
Well, that's a great question. I guess I started back in the 70s and 80s. My mother was the forerunner of the town manager at the time. She worked for the town for 43 years, retired in 86. And I kept hearing all these things about what was going on with the town, and you would hear if I was in charge, I would have done it this way, or how could they make a decision like that? And I thought I'd like to be part of that decision-making process. So I ran for council in '92, I think it was, and won by 2 votes, which was a landslide at the time. But since then, it's just grown more and more with things to do. New adventures come along, new people to meet, and new problems. And we have a host of problems now. A few years ago, one of the engineers complained because he didn't think he had enough work to do. So we started keeping track of it, and we're now up to about 70 projects that he's got. So we don't hear that anymore. He's got his hands full. And that's the way it should be. A lot of things on the table, a lot of work being done, a lot of people to meet, a lot of issues to address, and we go from there.
Good. Thank you. Megan, you've been here 2 decades. You're president of the council. You're already playing a very important role in that capacity. How would serving as mayor differ from what you're doing now, and why are you seeking that opportunity?
That's a great question. So I did start in 2009 as a ward representative and have worked my way up to council president right now. And the mayor really is the visionary, the leader of the community. They set the pace, they set the vision for the community, where the council really are the legislative body. We're making the rules and everything like that. And we control the agenda. The mayor presents a lot of stuff to us, and we do hold a lot of control over what happens in the town, development being one of them, budgets, things like that. But to make a jump to the mayor, I want to jump to the mayor because I do feel I'm a leader, and I have good ideas. And for me to try to implement some of my ideas, I'm not in the proper role. I do need permission from the mayor or get his buy-in currently to, address some of the issues or some of the ideas I have. As mayor, I'm able to lead that vision. I'm able to be proactive on some of the things that we have coming up. We've got some big issues. I know Mr. Silverstein talks a lot about the hospital, and that is a big issue. But it's not just the hospital. It's like the vision of what's going to be there when they close their door on a Friday and reopen on a Monday. So we need someone in that role who's able to start that process now and get ready for when the hospital opens in 2028. So those are the things that as mayor, I'm able to control.
Good, thanks. Al, you have a long and very distinguished career running U.S. Chambers of Commerce, and that really is a CEO kind of role, so I kind of get it. I mean, you're in the legislative capacity now in the council that Megan talked about. But what's driving you to take this step into the mayor's office?
Well, I think the genesis of it was last year when Mayor Willey became the longest-serving mayor in the history of Easton. He had indicated at that time he was thinking of not running again. And so I decided, looked around and said, who's next? And talked to some people, and as a result, made the decision. I see the mayor's position as an important position. Once the council approves the budget, it's the mayor's responsibility to have all staff reporting to that office. It's their responsibility to make sure that the citizens' wants and needs are addressed. And I think that the mayor should be the #1 lobbyist for our community. That mayor should be in Annapolis lobbying for us, working with the county council, working with other government entities, making sure that we stay on track to move our community forward. And the opportunity to be mayor, given my organizational management skills, for example, we used to meet at 7 o'clock at night for council meetings. We meet at 5:30. I think it limits public participation. We have a number of committees. Our recreation committee meets at noon. Our Board of Zoning Appeals meets at 9 o'clock in the morning. I think all of those meetings should be nighttime meetings so that people can get there and can participate better. I also feel as though we ought to start, like the county council, with an executive session prior to town council meetings and start a town council meeting again at 7 o'clock. But those things are not going to happen if I don't have that opportunity.
Al, I'm going to stay with you because I want to get into some questions about what was really the #1 issue on people's minds in the survey that ran on the SPY. And that survey has helped inform the questions and some of the discussion we're having. And the #1 issue was growth. No surprise to any of you. But I start with you because typically in the role of a Chamber of Commerce, it's to help businesses grow. To help, and I guess what I'd like to start with, and we'll get into some more specifics, but I'm going to ask each of you this. I'd like to understand if you thought of a continuum of growth where at one end was everything's just fine the way it is, we don't need anybody else, to we really have to put the pedal to the floor and create more jobs and bring more businesses here and find more housing, a high growth mode. Where are you on that continuum? What do you feel is right for Easton going forward?
Well, first of all, we have what's known as a green belt around the town. So we've self-imposed how far we want to grow. I grew up on rural Long Island. I've seen the way that's developed, and that's not my vision for this community. This community, we moved here for a reason. We love it. It has a lot going for it, and we don't want to make it a place that we're going to move somewhere else. So in my role in the chamber, it was working with small business. It was helping entrepreneurs be able to develop new programs, new services, so that they could stay here and work from here. We didn't have chain stores as members. And so those folks who might think that we were chasing chain stores, we never had a discussion with a chain store. That's not what it's about. But it really is about limited development, looking at where do we want things to happen in the community. We have a comprehensive plan, but how do we use the comprehensive plan? And that's the key element. And I think that's where the mayor can drive the staff, getting input from the community. So my vision is 10 years from now, maybe we're a community under 20,000. We're currently at 17. We've been growing 1% a year. I just think that the critical issue is we need new hospital and we need medical services to go along with that, or else the people who are sitting in this audience are going to have to get in a car and drive across the bridge. And I know that's not acceptable.
Bob, during your tenure as mayor and certainly in this town, you've seen this growth occur, although Al's percentages are the same ones I'm familiar with. The number is low, but you've seen new businesses come into downtown Easton. You've seen new big box stores come to the surrounding area, new houses. On this continuum idea, where do you think we are? Do we need a lot more? Do we need to stop? Just kind of, how do you see it?
I think we probably ought to pause. Several years ago, when Matthews Town Run was being thought about and being planned and being put together, at that time the citizens were wondering, what do you do about traffic? We need sidewalks. There were no plans for Route 328 at the time. We didn't have acceleration lanes, deceleration lanes, red lights, all the other stuff that comes with growth. And you know, one thing about being mayor, the buck kind of stops with you. And all of this had progressed through the process that the town had set up for deciding new growth and what it was necessary to have and so forth. And I vetoed the plan. Wasn't thought very highly of for a couple of weeks until, you know, things cooled down a little bit, but at least it got somebody's attention. And when we started looking at Matthews Town Run as a larger community, then the things started to happen, the road improvements started to happen. And that's what I see now is kind of coming along with the Hunters Mill neighborhood, the Gannon Estates, and possibly the Aspire, that we're really going to have to take a real strong look. What do we want to be? What should be in that neighborhood for amenities? And how do we go about getting them? But everything isn't just because you want to move to Easton and put up 100 houses. That's not the way it works. And there's a lot of people that have to pay attention to that.
Thank you, Megan. You've done, I know initially, a lot of your work was devoted to taking care of a park and making it both accessible and useful for the community. And I know you do a lot of community work. Where are you on this question? Do you think we need to grow to support an infrastructure, or do we have it about right as we are today?
I think we're a little bit in the middle. So the town has the comprehensive plan, and we also have our priority zoning. Currently, with all our priority 1 zoning that's already in the town, we have enough potential for growth beyond 2030. We've been sitting around 1%, and the market's going to dictate that. But as we want the hospital, and we want, you know, the techs and the nurses and the doctors to come to the town of Easton, we have to make sure that we have a place for them to live. I'm at a different generation than these gentlemen. You know, their kids are already established here and some of their grandkids. My kids are in high school and college. I want an opportunity for my kids to come back. And job growth doesn't just mean brick and mortar buildings. It means, you know, like working from home. A lot of people have the opportunity. But what young people are looking for, young families are looking for, is jobs, a home, and a vibrant community. And we have a lot of that. But where we're really feeling the pinch is in our affordable housing and our opportunities for first-time home buyers. So I think we have to manage. We have to look at growth that's beneficial for the town and managed. But we have enough room right now that's already established for growth. But when we look at these developments, what we really need to look at is the impact to our neighborhoods. So we have to be smart about it and look at the surrounding areas where this growth wants to happen. So for example, off Dutchman's Lane, we already have a 55 and over community that's being built right adjacent to Easton Club East that people really haven't heard about because it was a by right development. So we also have to realize that some of these property owners by right have the right to develop 200 homes adjacent to Easton Club East because they're zoned properly, their density is right, they've gone to the planning commission and they followed all the rules. And that doesn't get a lot of play in the town because it's not very controversial, but it is happening. So we can't deny that we're not going to grow because it is. We do see it already.
You know, so let's stay with affordable housing because you each, I know, talked about in some of these interviews that you recognize we need more affordable housing and more units. Al, maybe I'll go to you. I know you've said that's important, but where would it go? How do you bring it here in a way that a developer can, you know, find a location that won't then be blocked by people who don't want it in their neighborhood, shall we say?
Well, first of all, I think there's a number of things that we need to talk about. There's, when you say affordable housing, what's affordable? Workforce housing. And if you see what Habitat for Humanity is doing now, and they're getting modular built homes brought on site, it's costing about $300,000 to be able to do that. So what we need to do is we need a multi-pronged approach. We need to be working with Habitat for Humanity. We need to be working with other organizations that are in the housing business. We need to take a look at where the appropriate locations are. And in the case of the town might need to determine what land we can acquire and then make available for housing. We need programs that help our folks be able to afford first-time home buyer. We need to look at rural development money and see how that's available. And we need to start looking at more grants. Megan referred to the fact that you have a by-right community of 250 homes that are going to be built off of Dutchman's Lane. Because it's not coming to the town council and because it's not a PUD, nobody has talked to them about making a contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund. They should be making an Affordable Housing Fund contribution of at least $3,000 a home to give us some money to be able to work on those problems. But it's a problem every community is going through, and it's not easily solvable. But if you work cooperatively with other organizations, and if you take the lead, and I think Jake Day did a nice interview the other day with the Talbot Spy, talking about how mayors can lead by example and the importance of mayors getting out there and having a vision. I think that's important.
Thanks. Bob, you've clearly worked to bring affordable housing into the community. Where do things stand in your mind? Is there room for more? Go ahead.
Just a couple comments. One, Al brought up Jake Day. We've already talked with him a few weeks ago to arrange for him and his group to be in the town after the next election, and we start working on the housing issues and where the Department of Housing and Community Development may be able to help out. Another thing that we've missed on, and it was brought up years ago, and I don't think anybody really understood the full ramifications of it, is a public ordinance, a public facilities ordinance that would allow for restrooms to be built, the library, police department, stuff like that. And we kind of just, yeah, we know it, we know how to spell it, but we didn't really know what that meant. And now we're starting to feel the effects of that with the public restrooms that the town is putting together now right down the street and some of the other issues that have come up.
Megan, more on affordable housing, then I'm going to go to a version of this. Go ahead.
So yeah, we all identify affordable housing as an issue. But last year after the Ganem property went through, which is 200 homes off 328, I voted no for that for a number of reasons, a lot of it dealing with the comprehensive plan. And it's addressing affordable housing, which it didn't. So they got a 2.5 times the density bonus for what they're allowed to build. And in return, we got $3,000, which is $600,000 overall to the Affordable Housing Fund, which we can do a lot with, but we didn't get any units. And there wasn't any movement on the council's part to try to address that. It just didn't have the votes. So after that, you know, Mr. Engel had made a comment during that time that a developer, they want to come to the town of Easton, they need to open up a book and understand exactly what we want from them. So I worked with staff, we met with Habitat, we had a lot of meetings, and we came up with an inclusionary zoning ordinance. And in that ordinance, it does require developers to address affordable housing, but it gives them options to do it. They can do it on-site, they can do it off-site, they can partner with the Habitat for Humanity, they can pay a fee in lieu. But until we make developers accountable, we're not going to get the units we need, because the cost and the money going to the Affordable Housing Fund does a lot, but it's not necessarily enough to build the units that we need. It helps keep people in the homes that they have, which is important, but we also need the units. So back to the Dutchman's Lane, had we had that, of the 250 homes, we would have gotten a percentage of those listed as affordable.
Al.
Yeah, the introduction of inclusionary zoning, which is a California and West Coast idea, was tried a number of years ago when Easton Village was developed. And the developer was supposed to build 10 homes very similar to what was built out there. And it was determined very quickly that the individuals who would move into those at a much, much reduced rate couldn't afford the HOA fees, couldn't afford to maintain their properties. And it's a social engineering project that doesn't work. And I'm concerned, you know, you buy a house for $700,000 and 2 houses down, your neighbor buys that same house for $250,000. How are they going to maintain it? How are they going to upkeep? So I think we should get more from the developers, but I don't think we need to be like Easton, Texas, or anywhere else where you can build a mansion next to a shack. We need to be very careful about how our community develops. And, you know, in the past, we have been. And we've been very careful about brick buildings for businesses, how the sidewalks look, and everything else. And just because it's a great idea. The other thing is, how many people want to put a second home in their backyard? And how in the major areas of the community, which are older areas, look at what your parking is now and figure out where there's another 2 or 3 cars per house sitting there. So we have to look at these things very carefully.
Megan, you had a quick follow-up, and I've got one more question in this area, but you go ahead.
Yeah, that's why in that ordinance, there's a lot of options. And actually, the selling price, just to be clear within that ordinance, the selling price actually takes into account upkeep and HOA fees so that the price that the house is sold at is still affordable to that family and attainable.
So I want to ask you about a project. I'm not going to ask you because it wouldn't be fair for you to tell us your position unless you want to tell us your position. Poplar Hill is the project because you may make judgments down the road. What I'm curious about, and I think, Al, you were at the hearing. I saw it. I watched the whole thing. You know, when you see the presentation by the developer, it looks like, you know, the I's were dotted, the T's were crossed. You know, this just fits nicely within the requirements that they needed to meet, and then one person after another objected to it for a series of sound reasons to them. So I'm not asking you what your position would be. What I think would be useful to understand is when it comes before the council, or when issues like it come before the council and the mayor's office particularly, how will you evaluate it? What will you be looking for? Bob, maybe we'll start with you because they both had a chance. But if you are serving as mayor and Poplar Hill or something like it presents itself, what questions do you want to ask, or what questions do you want to answer to see something like that go forward?
Well, in no priority order. When you look at the Easton Parkway and 322 and Oxford Road intersection, that's an area that's getting ready to undergo some intense scrutiny, if you will. We've got the rails to trails that's headed down Wayside Avenue now. That's right off of just short of the YMCA there on South Washington Street. You've got the stream restoration project that's over behind my house that's going to be coming down to Tread Avenue. That'll feed water in there, and it'll be storm water out of the town and out of the new developments over on Dutchman's Lane and so forth. What really bothers me is the fact that trash is also going to be coming down those streams, and without some means of collecting it, it's going to go right on into the Tread Avenue and that marsh area right at the head of the Tread Avenue River. So that's problem number one, is how do we stop that? Then how do we figure out to continue the rails to trails network on towards the west and hook up and possibly someday be down to Trap Station or where have you? So that's another problem. Then you've got the possibility of a fire department substation out there, which is needed. Talbot County has the highest median age in the state of Maryland, so consequently you've got more ambulance calls and so forth. So we need to really, that's one project that the county has taken on that's really amazing how that works and how well they've funded that project and how well the paramedics work in Talbot County. It's really a blessing. But We have 200 acres on the west side of this project that we're going to develop as a passive park. Hiking trails, walking paths, picnic areas, barbecue pits, and so forth. So that's going to be pretty nice. But what do we do with the neighborhood itself and how it's laid out? Because it's already causing some concern about the outlay on Oxford Road with the traffic that goes there. I've never seen a traffic study done that didn't work. So whether it does or doesn't, it always has a favorable rating. And I'm going to lose my track of thought quick. But
We can go back. Traffic is a big issue. Let me go to Al, because Al was there. What was your takeaway? What would you want to see coming forward?
Well, I'll be very frank. I've sat with the developer and his representatives. I've looked at the project, and I feel as though that is not a good project for that piece of land at this time. I'm very concerned about the fact that as we do development, we aren't making sure that we have the roads necessary to handle the traffic. We should be talking to the county council. We should be talking to the school district. You know, we do a lot of things, but we do it in silos. And as we go forward in development, we need to be working together closer with the other entities of government that also are in Talbot County. And once again, I would not support that project.
Megan, your thoughts?
I think I'm the only one who has to tread super lightly on this topic. I can't comment specifically on projects because if I don't win the race on the second, I keep my council president position.
Fair enough.
And all these projects potentially are going to come back to the council.
But it is why I ask not for the position as much as what do you
Yeah.
look for when
What I'm looking
something comes
for-
before you?
What I'm looking for is the impact to the immediate community. How does traffic flow? Does it exit onto a highway? Does it go through another community? Is it appropriate? What's the impact on the environment? And how does it apply to the comprehensive plan? Those are the things I'm looking for. Open space, things like that, neighborhood feel, impact on the critical area, impact on the environment. And really, how does that project itself fit within the immediate and adjacent community that it's serving?
Good.
I got my
Bob,
thought
yeah,
back.
back to you.
I got my thought back.
That's good.
If you look at the Poplar Hill development, for instance, it's almost a choke point for a lot of activities that are going to be headed into that direction. Oxford Road, when I was in high school, we used to drag racer cars down there. There was never anybody down there except us in the mornings until
Statute of limitations has run out on this.
yeah, until the principal found out about it, and then we had to go somewhere else. But there's a lot of activity planned for that area. It's already pretty heavily traveled. I just think that the Poplar Hill development, when we talk about parkland, for instance, I asked them, you know, why don't you just devote the land to parks, give the town the funds to develop it the way the people want to see it developed, and not necessarily have grandstands and lights and what have you over there. And that was okay at the time, but I think that's been forgotten. So I think Poplar Hill is steadily facing obstacles, and they really need to listen to people and take them into account what they're asking for, and if it's reasonable, then we ought to be able to do it.
Thanks. You know, a close cousin to growth is this next area I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on, which is economic development. And all of you have talked about it and know a lot about it. And when I think about economic development, I think of a wonderful conversation I had with a young woman who owns and runs one of our leading retail spots in downtown Easton, who said, you know, this election is really important. My employees don't understand. It's really important. And what will the person who's elected mayor, what will they do for business downtown? And I thought to myself, here's a very entrepreneurial person who's chosen this community and has a successful business and a whole group of employees. And so she's focused on the election. So maybe I ask you to speak to her for a moment. And Megan, why don't I start with you about what can be done in the economic development area to help some of our local entrepreneurs and perhaps bring others here?
Sure. So I think that's a wide question, so we'll deal with it in a few ways. One is keeping downtown vibrant. Downtown is our brand. It's what the town of Easton is known for. We need to make sure we maintain, the high, the events where people come from out of town, our tourist events. But at the same time, we have to make sure that the town continues to provide opportunities for our community members to come down and enjoy downtown and hopefully discover something that they might not have seen before, right? Because we want a vibrant community. We want people to be invested where they live. And that in itself is going to attract businesses to come because they want to be here in the town of Easton like we all do. So there's one issue. We also have to remember that, again, business and growing business isn't just always brick and mortar. We have to maintain our facilities and our internet for a lot of those people who work from home. That's important because, a lot of people now are able to work a few days from home, and which helps with traffic and all that. So those are the things. We also need to maintain partnerships, with the state and the county, for example, on Mistletoe Hall, which is industrial land that we've identified for businesses to come to Easton, where you have anywhere from 10 to 30 employees, and that's a great opportunity. We also have an arts and entertainment zone. We have a couple of other zones that we need to make sure that we get that information out to our community and out to our business people. So for example, the enterprise zone, you invest $25,000, you add a few employees, you can apply for a tax credit. The art and entertainment, you make art in the town of Easton, you get a break on your income tax. So we have to make sure that gets out. But we also have to make sure that we're helping our minority businesses and those that might need extra help applying for grants, because that's a big hurdle for some people, right? A lot of people say, oh, I don't have a grant writer, I don't know a grant writer. So we have to make sure that it's equitable for all businesses and that we make sure that we push that information out.
Al, you worked on economic development in this community for some time. First of all, how do you think it's worked out? I mean, where do you think we are, and what more should we be doing? If you're a mayor, what more should we be doing in the economic development area?
Well, one of the things we can do is we can make the inspection process, the building process, make it easier for the businesses. Many times in my 20-year career at the Chamber, I got calls about my project is hung up in the engineering department, or I've got a building inspection problem, or things like that. A number of years ago, we talked about how to develop a fast-track system. What can we do to cut through the red tape and get things done quicker and better? So I think, if you talk to anybody who's built a project in the last 10 years, we have a need to streamline some of our systems. And also, if we're in a position where our staff is overwhelmed, we need to be able to bring in some outside assistance to help us do inspections or other things. As far as helping the downtown area, we spend over $400,000 a year with Easton Economic Development. Our commitment with that organization is to do the things that Megan talks about, the festivals, the special event, the music, all of those types of things. So we're making that commitment now. But we also need to tie people up, Small Business Development Center, which is out of Chesapeake College, to make sure that they're aware of the grants that are available, to make sure that our streets are swept, that our garbage cans downtown, this is one of my biggest complaints, our garbage cans downtown do not have plastic bags in them. And so therefore, all the garbage gets thrown in there, then the garbage trucks come, they throw it in there, and the residual sits there day after day after day. That's a small thing, but it's a big thing. We need to take a look, walk downtown and take a look if all the curbs are taken care of, if the handicapped accessibility is there. We have some areas downtown where we have gravel instead of sidewalks. Why is that? Why can't we make sure that those individuals who have issues walking, they have the best sidewalks, they have the best curb cuts? So I think it's a combination of things. As far as business development, I think the town has had a couple opportunities to work with folks on business development. Our industrial park, the new industrial park we have, actually is a business and industrial park. I think the way we're managing it right now, which is being managed out of the town manager's office, he's not an economic development director. I think that can be done differently and better, so we have a better result. Easton Utilities is wiring our county, working with our county council and with grants. That's going to help us with Lone Eagles. Those kinds of programs are great. We have the programs out of Salisbury, which will work with individuals who are minorities and get them loans. The other thing we need to do is make sure that those minority groups and individuals who have an MBE, that's a Maryland Business Enterprise designation, are on our list so that they have an opportunity to bid any of the projects that we're doing. And we should be looking at that really hard. I don't know, I've never seen a list of all the businesses that we send out bids to, and I think that's something we need to scrutinize.
Thanks, Bob. You know, so my sense is there's been an influx of business in downtown. It looks different than it did a decade ago, but there's also people that have left. And how have you managed over the years this kind of people coming and going, if you will? There's still vacant buildings. The Safeway building is there. What can we do to use some of the existing real estate for maybe new companies or get people to stay around longer?
One of the things that we've started on now is the downtown area is pretty much under development as we speak, and we've tried to figure out what way can the downtown go to create more business opportunities for small businesses, and also the housing necessary. And what we're looking at now is going out Dover Street from just outside here from Rohr Street to Route 50. And seeing what we can do about redoing some of the housing that's out there. The Doverbrook project for one. It's a $20 million project that's very expensive, and I think it doesn't really bring in a lot more building units, but it does refurbish that area. We also have a couple businesses that have just been sold. The roofing center, for instance, we've talked to the fellow that bought that about what his plans are. We're working with the neighborhood association about working with the neighborhoods to see what they'd like to have. We're going to have to do some increased code enforcement inspections and so forth. We really don't recruit businesses as such. We don't budget for that. We depend on the town, the people, the quality of the town, the life, and so forth to bring in new businesses. And what we're after is something 75 employees or less is what would be our goal. Once before we had Black & Decker in town that was over 1,000 employees, and when that left, it was traumatic. It took years to get over that, if we've ever gotten over it. And that building is slated to come down in the next year or so for additions to the airport. But there's a lot of things that can be done. We're working on them, and albeit piecemeal at this point. But we do have the direction set up, and we do have the people working on a plan to how we go about doing that.
You know, one of the questions or comments we got in the survey, and I know it's been talked about, and it kind of fits in here, I think, relates to a walking plaza. You know, you talk about, I know in my case, I first sort of got acquainted with Easton through the Waterfowl Festival, you know, and it's a great delight every year to wander around town, and you can't block all the streets off. But other communities have found, I think, benefits from a plaza kind of concept, and we got asked of us, and I just wondered if any of you would comment on it or have any thoughts on whether that might work here. Megan, I'll start with you.
I know there's a plan that's been done a few years ago. Unfortunately, you have to get all the property owners involved, but for an inner courtyard. It's the area that's between Washington and Harrison Street and Goldsboro and Dover. So there's an opportunity there, but you have to get cooperation with everyone on there. But it could be a great idea. You could then almost double the amount of retail space, because a lot of that back-facing area then would be accessible, you know, for pedestrians walking through. We do have a park that's kind of across from the bank on Dover Street, that would be like one access in. But it would be a great public space, and it certainly would set Easton apart from a lot of the small towns that we have.
Thanks. Al?
Well, I've looked at the courtyard project, and I've talked to the people there, and if you drive in the back and look at that, that's where people have their garbage cans. That's where people get their deliveries. And so, you know, it's a nice concept, but it hasn't been a workable concept. There were some who thought we should close streets off in the downtown. I would suggest they go down to Salisbury. They used to have a walkway down there and empty buildings. And they've done this new concept. It's called put a street through, so people actually can drive up to the buildings. And Salisbury has filled up those buildings in the downtown area. A lot of times we are able to go because we travel around the world and we see what other places are doing, and we think that's a great idea. And it is over there. We have to look at what is our community? What is it really, how is it set up? You know, are we a Federalist community when you look at the buildings? Look at how you get out to Highway 50. You've got to go through Goldsboro or Dover. And so if you start closing off all those streets and making them walkable, you're going to limit traffic. I think once again, we need to take a look at all of our streets and make sure that we repave them. All our sidewalks are good. All the curb cuts are there. And I would suggest that we do away with all paid parking in the town of Easton. And we sell ourselves as a community that's open to the public with no parking. When I first got on the council, Mr. Engel and I worked together to get rid of the parking lot on West Street. Now, part of the problem is those meters are so old you can't fix them. You can't read them, and they only take 25 cents. And we talked about that, and we've looked at how much revenue we get off of it. And I would suggest that, once again, we market ourselves differently and say, we're the town without meters. Come downtown, you know, and utilize the individuals that we have that are doing parking now. Use them on rails to trails, too. Because more and more, as we walk rails to trails, we're seeing more activities where we need a police presence.
Bob, I want to let you comment, but also take this a little bit into the section I call quality of life questions, because that's an area that concerns a lot of people. They believe that there's a quality of life in this community and they don't want to see it change. And so I wonder whether the environment downtown can be changed either through a plaza or a walk area, or there's more and more, I would observe, bicycle riding and pedestrian activity, but it also brings safety issues. And so how would you address that going forward? Do you see more opportunities for people to be downtown, walking, riding bikes, and on the streets?
As was indicated before, that's one of the charges of the Easton Economic Development people, is to have more activities for gathering downtown, walking the street, kind of enjoying themselves, much like the street concerts that the Avalon puts on. They're heavily attended and usually get off handled without a hitch, so they work very well. The thing that I keep hearing about is, you know, you have these activities downtown, but the stores aren't open. So the economic development folks are talking to the stores. Why aren't you open on Friday night, or close on Monday if you want, but open up on Wednesday or something of that nature? So we need to look at that. We are actively looking at the more cooperation between the economic development and the planning and zoning folks, because if they're going to bring a new business into town, there may be some activity that planning and zoning could help with to make that transition a lot smoother.
Thanks. Megan, you know, you got so involved with a park, and so I know recreation and that kind of thing is a priority for you, remains a priority for you. How do you see this moving forward in terms of giving people more opportunity to enjoy the area in and around town?
Yeah, and real quick, just to bounce off the last comment, Easton isn't only doesn't only have to be the downtown area. There's a lot of opportunity along Dover and the East End, along the rail to trail from Goldsboro all the way down to Brooklets and out to Rise Up. That area right there is prime for a culturally, new culture area with art and entertainment. It doesn't have to be downtown, but it certainly can complement it and have a different flavor. That's a great opportunity for our residents. It's walkable to a lot of our downtown neighbors. So we have to make sure that that's also an opportunity for our town, and we should move forward with a plan like that. But keeping Easton walkable with green space, that's important, obviously, to me. I started Idlewild Park project that launched me into politics. We did that in 2007, which was probably one of the biggest community builds that the town's ever seen, or potentially on the whole Eastern Shore. So parks are near and dear to my heart. I think over the time I've been pretty proud of the work that we've done towards the parks, not just with Idlewild, but I've been instrumental in the plan for Easton Point Park. That's the only waterfront property that the town owns, the only waterfront that our citizens have access to. Over the last few years, we purchased Southern States, which is adjacent to that, so we've added 3 more acres. We just added 197 acres of Woodland Park off Oxford Road, and we have a great extension to our bike path. What we need to do also, though, is connect the east side of 50 to our neighbors that we have downtown. And that's a great opportunity to extend the bike path over Route 50 and connect all those neighbors so they have a safe pedestrian and walkable, bikeable passage over to our community.
Bob, go ahead. I'm going to pop another topic here, but go ahead.
One of the things you find with projects that start in Easton, which is a perfectly nice 300-year-old town, but some of the infrastructure is 300 years old too. We have a strong problem with water and sewer runoff out in the northeast corner of the town. This would be from Aurora Street out to 50, Goldsboro Street, and so forth, where a lot of the old storm sewers are brick lined. So over the 100 years or so that they've been there, the bricks are starting to shift. And they don't work well. As you can see, last year we had a problem on Dover Street. We've had problems on at the intersection of Goldsboro and Aurora, there by the former Catholic Church building. We had a public meeting last week to inform folks of what the plans were for that area. And we're right now going after grant funding to do a whole changeover of water and sewer and stormwater problems in that area.
Thanks. You can't talk about quality of life without thinking about health care. I think, Al, you alluded to it, so I'm going to start with you. What can the person serving in the next term as mayor do to get the hospital project either back on track or keep it on track, depending on how you view it?
Well, as I've talked about before, the mayor needs to be the #1 lobbyist for the community. During this last session, the governor did not put any money into the budget, our current Governor Moore. And as we talked with our legislatures about it, as I talked with them, I asked if we were going to get anything into his provisional budget. And we kept hearing maybe $10 million. Well, what we ended up with is $10 million from the Senate and $10 million from the House of Delegates, because legislation was changed and now they're able to add money as opposed to previous years. But never once did the town council do a resolution. Never once did we get people fired up to say, we're going to march on Annapolis. This is our #1 issue. I look at the people up in Chestertown when they were going to lose their hospital, and they got together and they worked hard as a community, being led by their mayor, and they now are a new regional hospital center under a new model. And I just think we're not being proactive enough. And I think the other thing is we should have a full-time lobbyist representing us in Annapolis. If you want to get grants, if you want to do these other things, you need people who are inside the system and understand what's going on. And so if I'm elected mayor, you will see me spending more time in Annapolis working with the governor's office, working with the department heads like Jake Day, looking at what opportunities are available for us to avail. And then also spending time with the congressional delegation, just like they came here and gave $1 million to the ARC and $1 million to BAM. Those are the kinds of things we need to be on top of.
Bob, you've grappled with the hospital as it is today and what it might be later, and that building could become. But what about the new hospital? What can be done to get that moving forward here in the community?
Well, the one thing Mr. Silverstein said that I agree with is that we need to spend more time with our elected officials. We do that to a certain extent now as much as possible. We were up with the House of Delegates talking about the hospital monies. We've been in with the governor talking about the hospital monies. In fact, he's due down here later on this week, and we'll have a chance to talk with him about that. We work on the MML community committees and bring forth our message to them, and we're doing that pretty heavily. And if you look at the dollars that come to the town of Easton from both the feds and the state, we probably rank as high as any of them except for Montgomery County and Anne Arundel County, some of the heavily populated ones. But on the shore, we get our fair share.
Megan, it sounds like the answer is knock on more doors in Annapolis for the hospital. Is that where you're at as well?
Obviously, yes, we need to make sure that, beyond the hospital, all our issues that we have addressed in the town of Easton, we need to make sure that Annapolis hears us. I feel Governor Moore has made a commitment. The $20 million to start sounds like he's making a commitment towards the 100 over time, and that's great. And the feedback we get from the hospital this time, remember, we went through this over a decade ago, and it was stalled. They're farther along on the process right now and feel pretty confident that they're going to start breaking ground, and the hospital will begin operating in 2028. That's great news. But again, it's not just the building of the hospital. That creates a wonderful opportunity, a once in a generation, a once in a lifetime, really, opportunity for the town to reshape that area, not just the existing hospital, but the offices that are along Idlewild Avenue. And that's a wonderful opportunity. What do we want? Let's do an area plan, and let's start it now, so that way when the doors close on a Friday and reopen on a Monday, we are ready to go. And it's not just the hospital. We also have to make sure that we take care of all the issues around it. Making the travel time from Easton Club East, for example, is going to double. The travel time from residents within the town is going to be significantly impacted by the new location, as is response time for the ambulances. We need to make sure that we look down, a trickle down, traffic, signals, can we get you there safely? And do we give you multiple opportunities, multiple routes to get to the hospital in a safe manner, in a quick manner? Because, being downtown was one thing, but now where it's out on north end of town and we have traffic on Sundays and everything, we need to make sure that we look at the whole picture and we address all the issues.
Megan, let me stay with you. I want to talk a little bit. I'm mindful of our clock. We're approaching an hour, but we're a wonderful community, but we're a community like so many affected by crime. Either we have people who are real victims of crime, or people live with the concern of about crime. What's your perception of how we're doing from a public safety policing standpoint, and does more need to be done, or is it being managed effectively now?
I'm pretty proud of the work that Easton Police and the Easton Fire Department do for the town of Easton. Actually, our crime is pretty low compared to other places. Drugs is a big issue, and that's a message that we need to start in our younger community, kind of how MAD did it years ago with drunk driving, but we need to start addressing drugs in our communities and starting with the message that they're bad, with our teens and kids. But we need to make sure we keep supporting our police department. We need to make sure that our salaries are competitive. We have a take-home car option that will hopefully make us more competitive to make sure we retain our officers. But in February, we were approached, the mayor wrote a memo about the DROP program to the council, and it hasn't gone anywhere. That's an opportunity to retain our officers long-term, a little longer, like 5 years, which will help with our recruitment and retention. But we need to act on that. We got the memo, and there's been no action since. But we need to move forward with these ideas. We need to move forward with these plans to make sure that we retain our officers because they're doing a great job in the town of Easton.
Al, you spoke, and I was fascinated by this, the idea of reimagining policing in Easton, and I wondered maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, you talk about a couple of things. Number one, we have lost a number of police officers over the course of the last 5 years because our retirement system is not a good retirement system. We allow our police officers to retire after 22 years. But there's no cost of living index. So the day they retire and the amount that they get is the amount that they get from then on. And the state plan, which has a COLA, also has a program, a drop program. They can add money. Many times they can come out with $30,000 to $50,000 at the end. Has been a program that has been proposed for many years and not supported by the current administration. The council pushed last year for a study with the state to find out if we could get in the system. Here's what we found out. We found out that 6 years ago the IRS changed the rules, and you could not take the money in our current retirement system and roll it over into another system. So we're going to have to run two systems, and we determined that was not going to work. And as Megan said, the mayor has talked to the police chief about trying to do something, but at this point we still don't have any definitive information. Cars, yes, officers need a better retirement plan. They need take-home cars. We have raised the salaries for officers, but we're down 7 officers. And that's a critical need. We need to get in the game, and we need to work better. When I talk about reimagining, rails to trails, I have people talk to me all the time. I've lived on rails to trails for 18 years. I had a young man yesterday when I was walking my dog come up to me and ask if I had a cell phone he could use. Like, I'm going to give him a cell phone. I have seniors who come up to me and tell me they don't feel safe on rails to trails. I'd like to see us, we have 2 bicycle officers for rails to trails. That's not enough. I want to see us take the people, as I talked about, get rid of parking, utilize those individuals, put them in an small electric vehicle, let them run rails to trails. We should be putting markers on rails to trails so that if you call the police, you can tell them where you're at exactly on rails to trails if you have a problem. More than anything, we need to look at different ways of how we manage. Make sure the officers get out on foot and spend some time in the community. Now, we're doing coffee with a cop, and that's great, but a lot of times we're doing them at places where there aren't very many people. We need to look at bringing kids in and having a bike marathon where kids can bring their bikes and can be checked. The officers can make sure that they have the safety equipment, everything else. I think more and more we need to do that. The other thing is we need to look at our training facilities, and we need to upgrade our training facilities. And so there's a lot of different things we can do. And I've spent time with our chief. He has some good ideas, and I think that he's on the right track. The men and women that work for us do a great job. I've ridden with them last year about 4 times. And, some of the complaints might seem petty, but this morning there was a dog running in our neighborhood. And I called the police, and they came over. We told them which unit we thought it came from, and they were able to resolve it very quickly. And to the satisfaction of a lot of our neighbors who have dogs and couldn't get out and walk them. So the police do a lot of different things, and we need to make sure that we support them with the current, as much good pensions with the cars, but also making sure that they have the kind of equipment that they can use to maintain. One of the things we're talking about now is a piece of equipment that you put on your holster. If, God forbid, you have to pull your pistol, it automatically turns the camera on instead of you having to think about hitting the camera. That's a safety issue for them and a safety issue for the community. So I'm very supportive of doing what's necessary, but also looking at new ways to do things.
Thanks, Bob. You had a career in public safety, fire, and tell us what your assessment is today of the current fire and police officers here in Easton.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what's been said about the police and the needs. And as a rule, the budget is never cut police safety issues, police training issues. With the fire department, same type of issue. Volunteers, probably maybe 100 members, maybe a few more. A good many of them, probably 2/3 now, I guess, are life members. And if they stop coming, then we've got a problem. One of the numbers that came out the other day is they had 26 engineers, 19 of them were life members. So if those guys decide that, well, I've had enough, I'm not going to tote a hose or climb a ladder anymore, you'll have to get somebody else to do it, then we've got a real issue on our hands. That's why we've upgraded some of the benefits to stay in the fire department and attend the fires, such as the LoSAP program, which is basically a minor pension type thing that gives them a couple $100 a month to stay in the fire company. We also give credits to the fire department and the police department on property tax set-off so we can keep them in town. There's 2 new pieces of fire equipment coming in, and they've got a training ground underway that's doing very well on the fund drive. So the fire company is trying to raise that money themselves, which is fine. And as I said, they're doing very well on the fund drive at this point. But at some point, we're going to have to jump in and help out, I'm sure.
Great. I'm going to do one quick lightning round, which means short answer to a question I hope you find interesting. And meanwhile, if we can get ready for people who may wish to ask questions. I think they come to the podium. Somebody will tell me if that's not the case, or we'll hand you a microphone. But the podium's right up here, so if you'd like to ask a question, I will say on behalf of our candidates, we're looking for a question, not a speech. The lightning round is this. On Election Day, May 2nd, on Election Day, if the voters make you the mayor of Easton for 4 years, I want you to think down the road 4 years and tell us what you will have been most proud to have accomplished 4 years after the election. And Megan, I'm going to start with you.
I can only say one thing.
No, you can say more than one thing.
More than one
thing.
thing.
The things you're most interested in.
The thing,
2 or 3.
probably my top 3 things are, first-time home buyers, attainable housing, affordable housing, how you ever wanted to say it. Our budget, it increasingly is getting more difficult every year, and probably the small area plan for the area that's going to be impacted when the hospital moves north.
Thanks. Al?
I think the first thing we would look at is creating efficiency in our departments, making sure that we serve the public to the best of our abilities. Also to have an affordable housing program that's a functional program and puts people in houses. And the last thing is planning for the future. The fire department is going to be in a position probably 5 years from now where we're going to probably have to have paid engineers and paid drivers. And we need to prepare for that because the volunteer system is slowly changing. And we need to be prepared because that affects the rates we pay for insurance on our homes.
Bob, I know you're seeking re-election because there's some things that are just unfinished and you want to get done. What would please you the most in 4 years?
Well, some of these things are already underway. One of those is the training of new fire department individuals. The facility we're putting up out near the airport is designed to help the fire department, the police department, and the paramedics with their type of operation. I would expect to see in 5 years, I would like to see some of the neighborhoods cleaned up that we've started working on, getting the yards cleaned. I mean, you're just not going to take care of your house if the house next door isn't done well. So we'll put a lot of effort into cleaning up the houses. We'll put a lot of effort into community policing, and we'll also do a lot with the infrastructure. One of the things I've found is that when the town and Easton utilities get together on a project, whether it's bringing a new business in town or fixing a problem in the town, we're hard to beat. We're a good team, and that's the effort that needs to be done.
Thank you very much. Very thoughtful, all of you. There's nobody at the microphone. Here we go. Oh, Tom, why don't you step up there?
Thank you, Craig. I'm Tom Dennis. I live in Cook's Hope. First and foremost, I want to thank all three of you for your public service. This was an extraordinary event tonight, and I hope everyone appreciates the effort that you've put in. Mr. Silverstein, I could not agree more about the need for a lobbyist. Having been one for 35 years in Washington, you're right on target, and the opportunity to engage with this new administration is extraordinary, so I applaud you for bringing it up. I have a question for each of you. Would you support an adequate public facility ordinance? And if you don't know what that is, it essentially says to developers, if you're going to build, then you have to accommodate for the infrastructure. Otherwise, every one of us in this room will pay for it in the form of new taxes. So infrastructure for public safety, for health care, etc. Would appreciate your response.
Any of you want to jump in? Al?
I would definitely look at an APFO. Adequate public facilities ordinances have been around for a long time. Now, you do know we charge impact fees, and it's not the same thing, that's right. And in Annapolis recently, they decided they couldn't build some affordable housing projects because their affordable public APFO ordinance said they had to have so many police officers, and because they're down police officers, they can't build. But I would definitely want to take a look at that and see how we could craft that. I think it makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're important. What we have to be careful of as far as like transportation or traffic, you know, we have roads that are owned by the county and roads that are owned by the state. So we have to make sure that it's crafted in a way that the county or the state isn't necessarily making a negative impact on some of our plans. So I think we can navigate that for sure.
Bob?
As I mentioned before, the public facilities ordinance is necessary. It's not a new idea, but it's one that needs to be resurrected because it is getting more expensive all the time. We do need to hold the developers responsible and have a uniform system of what we're going to be asking for, whether it's a new library, whether it's additional housing, whether it's roads, whether it's sidewalks, whatever it might be, but there's got to be a contribution into this because as we've talked about, it's starting to become very serious.
Thank you. Please.
Good evening. Sally McCash. I live at the Easton Club. The Planning Commission is such an important party to the growth question. Particularly addressing this to Mayor Willey, could you please comment on the mayor's role in the appointment of commissioners to that body, please?
Would you like a comment on the role of the mayor in appointing members of the Planning Commission, correct?
One of the problems we have with members of any of the commissions we have is getting volunteers to staff them. None of the commission members are paid. We do throw in a lunch once in a while, which is pretty cheap freight. But we just don't have the people that volunteer unless we go out searching for them. And for instance, planning and zoning might need a lawyer, so we could talk into the lawyers to see who might be available, or a contractor or something of that nature. But if we had more volunteers, people just sending a resume to me and we could get squared away real quick with new people.
Isn't it the case, though, that the mayor does vet any applications that come in and make recommendations to the council?
Do you vet the applications that come in for the council? Does the mayor play the role of reviewing any application that does come in?
I review all of the applications that come in for any of the commissions and usually give those to the chairman of the commission or the staff member that's in charge of that group and have them do an interview to see whether the person really does want to do it and what talent do they bring to the commission itself.
One follow-up. During your terms as mayor, has there ever been anyone appointed to the Planning Commission that did not get your recommendation?
I can't say. I know there have been a couple members appointed that at some point I've taken off because they just didn't measure up.
Thank you.
Thanks. Megan, did you have a comment on that? Okay.
It was just that, yes, the recommendation comes from the mayor's office to the council, and the council ultimately votes on those commissioners.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Eric Levinson. I own the Hummingbird Inn here in town. And my question is more focused on the business. There was a short discussion about that, which I appreciated. What I've been noticing over the almost 6 years now that we've been open is that the draw to the town is diminishing in some ways and growing in others. I think the new push on the Economic Development Committee is fantastic, and the team there is doing a great job. We're seeing, businesses that are leaving, a lot of vacancies, and that what's filling the spaces is becoming more corporate and less retail. And from my perspective and what I hear from our guests is it's a great town, it's beautiful, the restaurants, the food, it's fantastic, but there's no shopping. Things are closed, as we talked about. Mayor Willey, you mentioned before in terms of hours of places are open. So I'm curious to know what you guys see as the direction of the town. Are we going more corporate, or are we trying to become a more retail town that when visitors come in, tourists come into the town, that there's things to do and places to shop versus the other businesses which don't really bring in that type of revenue?
Thank you. Megan, you want to
Yeah.
take?
I think a combination of both. We obviously have locations maybe outside the downtown corridor that would be great for corporate and foot traffic. But again, the downtown with the shops and bringing tourists in and the events that we have to bring the community to downtown. But I still believe that Dover corridor coming out and along the rail to trail is just right for redevelopment, and a really great idea as far as a culturally sensitive and vibrant with public art. There's just a lot of opportunity there. And as the mayor mentioned before, the Roof Center did sell, and we have met with that gentleman who has great ideas. And that as an anchor up along the rail to trail all the way down to the Brooklets building, the Purdue property is going to be sold. There's another area for development. So that adds a different flavor for the town of Easton all along that area, which hopefully will attract more retail and more foot traffic and more entertainment.
Al, I know you worked in developing these opportunities for companies.
Well, the gentleman who bought the Roof Center, Savan, I've been with him. I've toured his property. He has some great ideas for putting some things together. I've given him a couple of leads, and he's following up on those. More than anything, Eric, I think if we go back to 2008, our downtown was in terrible shape. Everybody was worried that it was going to be all real estate offices. And for a while there, it seemed that way. We've seen a rebirth of the downtown. We see a number of specialty shops, but we also know that some of those shops are in the process of being developed and worked on, and businesses will be in there. More than anything, the problem that I keep hearing, and for 38 years I worked for Chambers of Commerce, and the biggest complaint of the downtown areas was they don't stay open for us. We get off work at 5 o'clock, we go home, we feed our kids or do whatever, and we can't go downtown. Right. So why is Walmart there? Why is Target there? Why are other places? Because they have extended hours. The downtown, when I came here 23 years ago, many of the businesses were hobby businesses, individuals who, decided they wanted to have a jewelry store, a small jewelry store, small clothing store, things like that. And that's tough to sustain. Once those individuals retired, trying to get somebody else in. We have some vibrant young entrepreneurs downtown now. And I think working with Easton Economic Development, if we can get a critical mass of people to stay open, especially when the Avalon's doing their events, that's going to help quite a bit. And more than anything, we look at Easton. Easton is a fall and spring community. When it comes to the summer, you know where they're going. They're going to the water. So we need to take advantage of those times of the year and make sure we market. And like I say, I think Easton Economic Development is doing a number of events to try to bring people to the downtown area. The other thing is COVID hurt people very badly. And it's hard for them to come back. We gave $1 million as a town to a number of individuals, $25,000 a shot, to help them out from COVID. We did that out of the first $8.2 million that we received from the feds, but we haven't done anything out of the second truncheon of $8.2 million. And I was hoping we would at least do a $500,000 to help some of the other folks who are still struggling. But we have to keep working at it, and you, as a business person, have to encourage other business people to stay open because your clientele needs places to go. And it's all of us working cooperatively that's going to get the job done.
It's disappointing to have to send people to other towns, particularly on Sundays and Mondays. And a lot of people come and stay on Sunday. They don't want to do the bridge traffic Sunday afternoon, so they're extending their stays into Monday, and there's nothing to do. There's 2 restaurants open out of all the restaurants. Most of the shops are closed, and if you want to do anything, we have to send people to St. Michael's and other places, and that's not right.
Bob, how do you feel about keeping people here, you know, in town on these later hours, and also the diversity of the businesses here?
Yeah. If you remember back when Walmart came to town the first time, we had a series of seminars of how you live with Walmart in the town. The thing was that the small businesses didn't go head to head with them, but they had their niche. Easton Hardware, for instance, is a great example of a niche in the workplace that they do very well. We've also been in contact with Cambridge, St. Michael's, and some of the other towns in the area about regional events that we may all pitch in and benefit from them. Cambridge is a very exciting idea right now. And one small correction, that second $8.2 million is down to $3 million now. $5 million of it's already gone out.
Fair enough.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any question from the online community?
We actually do, but I've got a few people in front of me, so
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I'll be third, I guess.
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you all, the 3 of you and our commentator, for taking the time out to make this this evening very instructional. I think my question springboards off the gentleman who just spoke. His concern was, how do we keep tourists and transit people in town and staying in town? But I think what's being lost, at least I feel, I have been fortunate enough to own a home in the historic district where I can walk to businesses in town. Lately, there have been a number of businesses that have closed, mainly restaurants. And that's attrition. I totally understand that. But it seems over a period of time what's being replaced are businesses that folks here who live here can't afford. We have a restaurant, and I'll give you an example, and it blew me away. We have a restaurant who, when the sommelier was questioned what price range of bottles of wine they offer, I was told anywhere between $80 and $800 a bottle of wine. Well, that's fabulous, but that's not necessarily what maintains the residents of Easton. what that maintains is people from out of town, from out of state, to come here and enjoy our town. And I think we need that, but we also need to keep an eye on what our residents can afford. And so I'd like to ask each of you what can be done to keep our town more affordable for the people who live here.
You all heard that? What can be done to keep the town more affordable for the residents here? Al?
You know, the town can do a lot of things, but the town is not in the business of telling businesses what to charge for their prices. I know that I'm not buying an $800 bottle of wine, but there are other people that's their thing. My wife and I dine downtown. We go to different places, and we find what fits us. And I think that people have, in many cases, misconceptions until they go into the place and see what you can buy. The price of food has gone way up everywhere. But I think that Easton has enough different opportunities. When I go to Cambridge, and they have places there that are comparable to us. When we go to Salisbury or other places, we also have family-style places. But I don't think it's the role of government, very frankly, to tell businesses what they should charge for their pricing. And I know that's harsh, but I can't go to the jewelry store and tell them that I want a $5,000 watch and they should sell it to me for $2,000. I think more than anything, as business people, they have to make a determination what is going to be able to make their business run. And as consumers, we have a choice of deciding where we go. More than anything, I think the town needs to make sure that we're as accessible and as friendly when people come to town for parking spaces, make sure that we have events and things like that. But I wish I could wave a wand and control everything, but we can't.
I saw Bob pick up his microphone on this. Do you have a sense that we can keep or recruit, I should say, enterprises that are more affordable for our residents, or are we destined to have more and more expensive retail activities? Yeah, go ahead.
I think what we have control over that we try to keep well within the reach of everybody in the town. Taxes, for one thing, we try to do as well as we can. We try to also give a variety, as Al pointed out, a variety of locations where people can go. You don't always have to go to jewelry store X to get your watch if you want to go to jewelry store Y to get one. So there are options to shop around the town. And quite frankly, there's stores that I can't go into because I know I'm going to come out with a payment book if I do. That's not something that's in my plans right now. And I was talking out at the Jewish temple one night and made a remark about my wife and I, when I went to get her wedding ring back in 1960. Wow, that was a long time ago. But anyway, in 1960, and at that time you would go in, and Mort Scheer had this store. It was Steve Scheer's father. You didn't have to worry about could you pay for it or not. Take the ring and pay me as you go. And with a couple more payments, she can keep the ring because we'll have it paid for. But that's the way things were done. And you had the handshake. You could still talk to the guy first name. But we all have, as Al pointed out, we've got options. And we try to keep more options all the time and keep them within a range that we can work with. But it's not always possible.
Megan, you're in town, or
Yes.
how do you feel about this in terms of, places being open, places being available, places being affordable?
I understand it completely. I live down on the hill. We've lived there for almost 20 years. And one of the things I love about living in town is the fact that I can walk out my door and walk somewhere. And at the time when we moved here, we had one son, and we've added 2 more children. So to be able to walk out and walk to the park, walk to the library, walk down to Hills, you know, we enjoyed that, and that's what made living in town great. We couldn't afford to, you know, visit many of the shops. We usually spend most of our money on food. So what we can do as a community, though, is to make sure that we keep downtown Easton walkable and safe. We create events that bring our community downtown, that they're equitable, they're free. You know, the concerts on the street, whether they're movies in the evening in the parks, or coming down to the library, or any of the events we have to make sure we keep that so that our community does feel a reason to come downtown and enjoy things. And maybe they'll find something new. But again, you know, there's an opportunity down along Dover. I keep repeating myself. We have an opportunity there to do something great and redesign and kind of push some new retail and some new restaurants in that community where maybe potentially could be affordable.
Thank you.
I have one more
Okay,
hard
one more.
right, if I may.
Our clock is moving, but go ahead.
Okay. Port Street. I understand, and I believe, I might be wrong, that there is a master plan for Port Street. Will that siphon businesses off from our downtown?
Good question.
There is.
No, go ahead. Make it. No. Go, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, there is. So we have an MXW zone down there, which really lays out exactly how far away from the waterfront, the height, the limitations, and the density. Closer to the waterfront, lower height, lower density. Closer to Port Street, higher density and a little higher. A lot of that is probably slated to be residential and probably some commercial. I don't see it as a competitor. I see it as a complement.
Sure.
Along with the park that we have down there, you know, we have Easton Point Park. We just bought Southern States, so there's an area down there for pedestrians to come. And that park is really kind of split into 2 zones almost. There's the more passive northern zone, and then the area on Southern States we're looking to have the boat ramp. And what we're encouraging the county to do then is to actually close their boat ramp at the point and create another pocket park. Because what a view down the river. And that way we can connect the 2 parks pedestrian-wise and really create a great experience for our community. And no, I don't think it's going to compete. I think it's really going to complement what we have.
Wonderful.
Easton Point.
And as they created that new district, the idea was small shops that would service those individuals who are going down to the park and going down to the water who live there. So the intent is not to take away from the downtown.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Noah Matten. I've been a resident in town for about 10 years, and I've met all 3 of you and worked with you. My question is something to look beyond where we are today and where town will be in 20 years. And I think Al brought up the fact that we have the highest median age of any county in the state of Maryland. What is it that all 3 of you intend to do to make our community something that's attractive for all age groups, all sex, and all races to come here and continue what has been started, with the looming fact that generation that is the upper end of our age bracket is the largest generation in America, and is at a point where they're going to be departing us at some point in the future.
Well, if you're in the undertaking business, if you're in the undertaking business, you look at that as an opportunity. I would say this to you. I always ask this question when I'm in a room full of people and we talk about the community. How many individuals in this room were born and raised in Talbot County? Okay. How many of you moved here because of a job opportunity? And how many of you retired here? I think the answer is if you want to bring back new, younger individuals to your community, you have to have opportunities for them. You've got to have job opportunities. And you know, so we need to be working with different organizations that are recruiting to see what we can do to assist them. A new regional medical center is going to be our largest economic development initiative for the next 15 to 20 years, because with it, it will bring a number of individuals who are professionals and individuals who will support those professionals. And that's a critical need. And, you know, you need to grow your own and get kids involved very, very early in what opportunities people have. I know that in my particular case, you know, I grew up on Long Island. I went to school in South Dakota. I've lived in other communities. Most of the reason I've lived there is because of a job opportunity. And so I think we should be looking at those individuals who graduated from our high schools that are in their 30s and are looking for a chance to get back to a community where they feel safe, where they can raise families. And we need to look at developing an initiative similar to what we did in Nebraska, which was go out and let them know about the job opportunities. Find ways to let people know that they can come home and they can have a really good life here. And those are the kinds of economic development initiatives that really pay off.
Bob?
And we talked a little bit earlier about working with the local towns to bring in more festivals, bring in more events. And one of those came up a few years ago with the Maryland Municipal League when we asked why you didn't have some of your conferences here in Easton. And they said you didn't have a facility big enough to take care of that, which the Tidewater at the time was the biggest facility we had. So we talked with Oxford, we talked with St. Michael's, that possibly they could set up day trips. We could have events in all three towns that would make people happy to come this way. It would be something to take families who could go and enjoy the amenities in the area. And that was kind of voted down. But we're a growing area, but we don't have all the amenities that attract people here at this point. But if you've got any comments and any ideas, give me a call. Give me an email. I'd listen. I can't imagine any call that I've ever turned down, maybe one or two, but usually when people call, it's for a reason, and we try to answer those questions as quickly as possible.
Fair
so
enough.
If you've got ideas, man, don't hold them. Let's let them flow.
Megan, you want to take this one on?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add, in agreement with the gentleman, is that, the town of Easton has a lot for its size, right? We've got the Art Academy, we've got the Avalon, we've got a lot to offer. We all could have moved to another small town, right? If we're all looking for small town living or small town rural living. But we chose Easton for a reason. For a town our size, we really have a lot of amenities. We have a lot of culture, a lot of art, music, everything. So we're very fortunate for what we have. And I think that alone, as we encourage that, will draw people more to Easton, for sure.
Great, thanks. Jess, first of all, we want to thank the people who've been listening online, and you're their representative with a question.
I know, I'm so lucky. I will say that we've been averaging about 100 people online across our different streaming services this whole time, and of course this will be available online on Facebook and on YouTube for people to share subsequent if there are things that you feel like you missed, or if there's some neighbor of yours who needs to tune into this. I do have a question from a viewer online who posted in the chat. His name is Kevin Full. He's from the St. Albans neighborhood, and he says, a pedestrian wishing to walk the length of Washington Street, the backbone thoroughfare of Easton, cannot do so using a sidewalk. What do you think about making roads safer? I think specifically about walkability, but I'm interpreting that part.
Well, I think one of the initiatives we should look at is putting as many sidewalks in as possible in our neighborhoods. I think that's an initiative that's critical to the safety of individuals, and I would look to see each year in the budget determine where we can do that and get the resources to do it.
We definitely need to make Easton walkable and bikeable. And in addition to the sidewalks and everything, we also have to watch out for signalized crossings, because you never want to play Frogger when you're crossing at the intersections and who has the right of way. So we need to make sure for pedestrian safety that we have those signalized crossings.
Bob.
There are still several streets in the town of Easton that are owned by the state. Bay Street, South Washington Street, Peach Blossom out by the YMCA, and a couple more. I think there's 5 right now. And what we're looking at is full street rebuilds, which would have the state bring those streets up to town specs. Then we would take them over and run them from then on out. But that would include water, sewer, curb, gutter, sidewalks, paving, streetlights, all of it. And those kind of things, as we move forward, we get a few at a time. You just can't do them all at once.
Great, thank you. We've reached our 90-minute mark, and we have 2 more questions. Fast, though.
Lynn Milkey, and I'm a resident of Easton Club. I have one word: cannabis. We know that it's been legalized, going to go into effect July 1. The town of Oxford is considering a moratorium. Whether they're able to do that, I don't know. St. Michael's has enacted one. What is the town of Easton's plan with respect to dispensaries and the effect that law is going to have, number 1? And number 2 is, would the town of Easton be willing to participate with the municipalities and the county to have a comprehensive cannabis legalization program?
We saved these easy ones for the last. Cannabis, anybody would like to jump in on this one? Good.
Well, I think what we need to do is take a look at the legislation that passed to see if we have the right to do that. And then from there, then we can make a determination what's the appropriate way to go. It is going to be a very challenging issue. But remember, 65% of the voters passed that legislation, and now we're going to have to deal with it.
I think there's still a lot of questions that we have to hear from the state before we are able to formulate some kind of plan for our community.
Good. And one other one.
Good evening. My name is Scott Wagner. I live in St. Michael's. I'm a developer of properties, a property here in the town of Easton, which is specifically the technology park behind the airport, and also own several properties in the downtown area. Number 1, I want to thank the 3 of you for being here tonight. I sat in your seat for a period of time. I was in the Pennsylvania State Senate for 4.5 years. It was the least productive time of my life, and I'm a business guy. I'm 68 years old, so I'm going to make a few statements, and you know, some of them are going to upset people, but you have to hear the truth. And I have a sign in my office that says, "Align your expectation with reality." I will challenge all of you that in 4 years you will not have accomplished much, and I will tell you why. Talbot County is very clearly anti-development. The town of Easton is anti-development. I know firsthand. And so, you know, as I work through and I understand, you know, the issues down here, I will challenge all of you. That hospital will not be built by 2028 unless something major happens. And what I would like to know, is the hospital system a nonprofit system? Okay, and if it is, I would like to know the finances of that hospital system. In Pennsylvania, there are some very large hospitals that are nonprofit hospitals. UPMC is one. Pays their CEO $14 million a year. They have hangars full of big jets because they fly to Saudi Arabia and Dubai. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about the finances of the hospital system. Nobody's asking those questions. And when you start asking those questions, it gets very uncomfortable for a lot of people. As far as you talk about housing, you talk about growth, you talk about economic development, there is no alignment of any of this stuff down here. And I'm experiencing it firsthand. So, and for many of you in the room this evening, you have an interest in the Poplar Hill development. Poplar Hill development will never fly. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the developer will be feed to death. He will pay at least $10,000 per unit between sewer EDUs, impact fees, permit fees, and utility hookup fees, and other funds you're talking about, participating. If the developer is his plan is 500 homes, that's $5 million. I don't know how the numbers work, and that doesn't include engineering and legal, and that doesn't include his land acquisition. So I have no idea financially, and with the interest rate and the dynamics of what's going on in the real estate market, and especially the banking market, I believe it's going to be a dead project, and that should make a lot of people, happy. But on the flip side, how do we deal with this housing? We're talking about bringing younger people back to the market. There are so many issues here in this county, and it's deadlocked, and I'm seeing it every day. The airport, I've been sitting in on the airport expansion for several years, and right now the roadblock is the widening of Airport Road, and it just isn't getting done. And we're in year 4, and it just is almost like we don't have the juice in this county to get things done. And frankly, when it comes to the airport expansion, there'd be 3 people you'd call, the two U.S. senators and Andy Harris. They're the ones you have to talk to, not Johnny Mounts or others, because it's a federal agency. So, I would love to be at the table and have a dialogue about the issues that you face. And also you have an interesting tax structure here. So, your tax structure. So you have a lot of challenges here that all tie together. And I believe that, while I applaud you for being here tonight, and there's a lot of good ideas, in business, we come up with ideas. We want to see a business plan. We want to know how you're going to get to the end goal on what you're proposing. So there's a ton of things here that have to come together. And 4 years from now, I think we're going to be talking about the same thing.
Let me extract a question out of that. I think the point, as I take it, is a good one, which gets kind of to where we started, and that is the role of the mayor. And does the mayor's position as it exists, and Bob, let's start with you because you're there, but does it provide you with the ability as a leader in the community to bring people together to advance the hospital or development or affordable housing, and or like so many? And I think part of the frustration voters have, I know, with Washington, is that who's leading? How do you get anything done? But the local level is usually the place where you see things getting done. So is the mayor's office strong enough, as you see it, to lead and to bring people together to achieve some of the things you've talked about? We'll start with Bob, and we'll go down the row.
Yeah, I think so. The problem you get into is sooner or later your initiative for starting a program or getting a group together to talk about something and set a plan is that you run into roadblocks, and then it's the key people that you bring in to take that roadblock down and get you started again in another direction. So I think the process is good. It just has to be kept up and constantly modernized, if you will.
Al, you thought a lot about this, I know.
Well, the mayor has a lot of authority. The mayor has the bully pulpit, and the mayor should be holding his people accountable to get the things we want done. But the mayor has to set the course, has to determine where we're going, and then has every day to make sure that we meet those marks. And no, you can't get everything done you want, but there's a lot of things that you can do, and I've seen it in other communities. When you've got dynamic leadership, you can accomplish a lot of things.
Megan?
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, we need the participation of the council. So it's not just the mayor alone, but with cooperation with them. But absolutely, the mayor is the leader. He is the visionary, or they, or she, of the community, and that's what's needed. So they need to set the tone and be the one out in front doing things for the community.
Great, thank you. Let's give you each a chance and maybe a couple minutes each to just sum up, and I'm going to start with you, Megan. We'll let the mayor go last here. Really just to reflect on anything, maybe we didn't cover, anything you'd like to emphasize, but it's your 2 minutes. Go ahead.
2 minutes. I'm a woman of a few words, I'll admit. But I do hope that my commitment to the town of Easton has been evident. I've been here since 2006 and really working for the community since 2007. Beyond just what I do on the council, I run a nonprofit called Care Packs, which we feed weekend food. We send weekend food home for kids in Talbot County. We serve up to 300 children. And over time with that program, we've grown and grown and grown. We've always set a new goal, a new goal, a new goal. The town of Easton can do the exact same thing. We're doing a great job. We can always do better. We need to be proactive. We've all identified issues within the town. Few of us have been able to actually give a solution. It at least starts the conversation. Is it the correct one? Maybe not, but let's start the conversation and get things done. I have a lot of ideas that I think will enhance the community, between public art committee, extending the rail to trail, things like that, the inclusionary zoning. We have a lot of work to do within the budget. We need to involve the council at a much earlier stage than we do currently. Right now, our budget won't pass until after a new council is voted and potentially a new mayor is voted in. So there are a lot of improvements we can make, and I hope that my commitment to the town, my leadership ability is evident that I have the skills to lead the community moving forward for the next 4, potentially 8 years.
Thank you. Al.
I've got 38 years of organizational management experience behind me. I know how to go into organizations that are not functioning as well as they need to be functioning and fix them. And there are things that need to be fixed in our organization. We've got quality people, but we need to make sure that they know what the direction is of the mayor. They need to know where we are going and how we're going to get there. We don't do any management training until this year. We are in a position where we do not get together with the council and the staff and sit down and do strategic planning. We are reacting to the things that come to us instead of being proactive and saying what is happening in the future and how are we going to deal with those things. And the one advantage we have as a community is we have Easton Utilities, which we own. And we could be doing many more things in partnership with them that can make this a better community. And so I ask that you take a look at my organizational experience, my 23 years of involvement in this community with organizations, and say it's time for new leadership and vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Bob, we're going to give you the last word, sir.
I was first elected mayor in May of 2003. After serving on the town council for 12 years, half that time as the council president. It's easy to forget, but back then Easton and our downtown were struggling. There was little to no entertainment in downtown. Businesses weren't keeping hours after dark, and even fewer people were out and about, and the Avalon Theater was closed. Now downtown businesses are abundant and thriving and coming back from the pandemic stronger than before. The town government on my watch has worked hard to play an important part to make these things happen, and I believe the best is yet to come if we keep a steady course. I could list many projects with very favorable outcomes that have occurred throughout the town of Easton during my tenure. We dedicated a memorial walk at the corner of Dover and West Street in 2007, which honors all veterans, firefighters, police officers, and elected officials. We expanded our enterprise zone and an arts and entertainment district, which now make Easton a diverse arts community, offering a mix of fine art galleries, performance venues, museums, and artist studios. Unlike many other towns, Easton's business parks, Talbot Commerce Park, Easton Technology Center, Mistletoe Hall Farm Industrial Park, Clifton Industrial Park, and Glebe Industrial Park, are completely sold out or very close to full capacity. Working with the council, Easton Point now has a public waterfront park, and there's more to come. Plans call for even more open space and amenities that we will all enjoy now and for years to come. While not raising taxes for 15 years, we kept up on our capital investments. Among them, the district court building constructed to keep the court in downtown Easton, the Easton Police Department, a substation for the Easton Fire Department, and substantial renovations to the town office building and the Easton Fire Department. In addition, the Public Works were relocated to Bryan Drive. Our town is culturally rich and diverse place. We honor our veterans, firefighters, police officers, and public servants at Memorial Walk on the corner of Dover and West. We have a place of honor for Frederick Douglass on the courthouse lawn in the center of our town. We've started the Hill Housing Project. Our town is fortunate to host Temple B'nai Israel, which is home to the shore's only Holocaust Torah. Our town donates public space downtown for our Veterans Affairs Office, where those who need it can find it. We restore impaired streams because we want our environment clean for our kids and grandkids. Easton has been moving forward steadily for 300 years, and we're going to keep going. We are a great community because it works together, and we work together well. The volunteers and staff that run town government care, and I'm fortunate to work with a town council that looks for progress. I have never wanted to be mayor because I'm flashy or somehow think it makes me important. What is important from my perspective is that Easton keeps getting better, keeps progressing. I think I know how to make that happen because I've done it over and over and over and in many ways, and I want to keep doing it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you to do two things. Go out on May 2nd and vote. You could also call and get an absentee ballot or mail-in ballot, or you can drop by the city and pick one up. But May 2nd is the election. Please go out and vote. Most importantly, I'd like you to join me in thanking the Avalon Foundation and the SPY and these three incredible individuals who are as articulate as they are passionate about our community. Thank you very much.